let me ask you this, since you're just talking about that subject. So talk about not getting enough credit. Your brother, who again, we're just wrestling fans, so we only know from documentaries or what
Yeah.
shoot interviews said. Eddie, our first, when me and Jimmy started watching wrestling,
Right.
Eddie was this little guy who was a scrub, like an enhancement. Did I just use the word scrub? I can't believe I did that. Enhancement talent in the early WWF days that me and Jimmy were, and then Eddie started to grow the reputation. But the point that I'm getting to is Eddie doesn't get enough credit for being a genius, also. But the real question I want to ask you, considering what a genius he was, how come Vince McMahon Jr. didn't find his way to Eddie and bring him to help the WWF in like the earlier days
He
before Hogan or before or after?
he actually did, but that would have been in 87ish, 87, somewhere like that. And I might be a tad off, but you'll probably know the year from some of these folks. But it was when my brother was booking, when Mid-South turned to UWF. Vince was swallowing up Watts' talent. My brother wound up being the booker of the UWF. Well, right here's what happened. Before my brother got the book in UWF, he had talked to Vince. So Vince was going to fly him up, and they talked about a couple different scenarios. But he was going to be in the office, but Vince wanted to use him as a manager or as a mouthpiece, and which my brother just wanted to work. He didn't really want to be a manager. He wanted to work, but they talked about him being in the office. Well, what Eddie did was he used that as leverage, which I guess anybody, a smart guy, would do. He called Bill Watts. He'd come home to Memphis, and he called Bill Watts, and he said, either I want the book or I'm going to work for Vince. And Bill Watts wound up calling back and said, I'll give you the book. So Eddie stayed with Watts because it was all, like you said, as far as Eddie being smart and being a good booker and having a great mind. Well, like I said, that was Eddie's leverage that was his job, to be the booker of UWF. And that's what he believed in, the territory, he believed in the talent. But you got to realize at that point is when Vince was swallowing everybody up. I mean, he took about everybody that Watts had, but then, Jim Crockett bought out Watts right after this time. And then, man, you're talking about the change that I saw. Now, that's when you got to realize this was, like I said, 87, 88. That's right when I started, and I went to work for Watts in. So when you start during the midst of all this, and then, you've got Dusty and all Crockett's guys coming in to, they still book the UWF, and Eddie would book it, but then Dusty would, put himself and one or two other guys on there, and Eddie would just put them at the top of the card or next to last or whatever, and then put the UWF guys around that. But they would come in. But I'm sure y'all guys during the history, y'all have heard a little bit about that.
Eddie, I as I think about Eddie, I take two things out of what you're saying, Doug. It seems to me like, obviously, why would he not want Eddie as far as the in-ring stuff? And Mike, we know it already. It's got to be because he thought Eddie was too small, because that's Vince McMahon. It's 1987 or so. So there's that. I'm also amazed that you have to be impressed that at a very young age, because Eddie's young. Eddie is named a booker. Right. How many guys his age were doing this back then? Right?
Yeah, you got to figure Eddie was 25 years old.
Come on. So do you also think there was a potential, personality clash anyway that would have happened between Eddie and Vince? Because Eddie is his own man. Vince McMahon doesn't want people to be their own men. Usually.
And they probably would have been, but I think Eddie would have. I think it would have been different for Eddie and everything. I don't really think he would have liked it, because here was the thing, and y'all fellas know this, and y'all have had to talk to enough guys. I've talked a couple of my friends that's been on your show and everything. They tell me you're cool about all the older stuff. But here's the thing: my brother thought, and it was the old school style, but you should have a booker, and the booker should have an assistant, and then you could have, if it was us three guys, I mean, he could listen to us. If y'all was two of his guys and I was one of his guys, we could throw ideas off of him. And if your idea was better than his, he didn't care to use your idea. But that's where my brother was different than most bookers and everything. But I mean, my brother was really cool as far as about his talent and the crew from bottom to top. Everybody could talk to him. And if you had something you wanted to shoot off of him, he would listen to it. But now, if he thought his was better, he would do his. But if he thought yours was close and it could change something, he would put your idea in with his and change stuff up. And it did make things a lot better.
Do you, as his brother, when he decides he's going to go back to Louisiana, do you say to him, "You're making an epic mistake here"? I mean, it kind of seems clear that Eddie he loved wrestling more than he loved money, right? Because if he hangs out at WWE and gets that type of role, that dude could possibly swim in cash, right?
He's definitely getting money, but he's young and he's still great in the ring. So where do you think?
Yeah.
Where does this lie?
Well, and it's like y'all fellas said a while ago. You got to realize when Vince told him that about, and because I mean, I thought my brother was great in the ring. I loved working with him. I thought he was great at promos. He had the charisma and everything. But what y'all guys just said earlier, you got to realize Vince Jr. Size-wise was everything to Vince Jr. Now, Vince Sr., you know, when y'all was talking about y'all maybe seeing my brother like an 80, 81, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Vince Sr. come to Puerto Rico where my brother and father was wrestling at. And Vince Sr. had watched my brother work, and he'd watched Kurt Hennig work. And Vince Sr. loved Kurt, and Vince Sr. loved my brother. Well, I laughed at Eddie one time. He said, "You know what?" said, might have been better for me if Vince Jr. would have loved my work and as much as his dad did. But his dad really loved my brother and Kurt and everything. And but yeah, I remember Eddie saying that. Said it might have been good if Vince Jr. loved my work as much as his dad did. But that I guess wasn't the case. But like I said, Vince Jr. wanted Eddie for his mind though, and like I said, Eddie. I think when he got up there and, you know, you had all, and I mean, heck, you still got some of them today around, I think, or not, most of them might be gone now, but y'all guys remember what I'm talking about in 80 with the guys that Vince had around him. I mean, as far as, you know, those guys stayed there forever, didn't they? I mean, they might as well have been drawing a pension because they was there for like 30-something years or so.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think my brother could have, I think if he would have went like y'all guys are saying, and I think if he would have just played his cards right and kept his mouth shut, he could have probably done real well. But that wasn't my brother's, and I don't mean this in a negative way. That wasn't Eddie's strong suit. His strong suit was telling people the truth about what he thought. Now, whether you thought it or I thought it, there's a few things I didn't agree with him on, but he was steady to his thinking, his booking, his logic, and 90-something% of the time it all worked.
Well, you know, it's funny, Doug. I had a very difficult question on this, and I think you're kind of answering it. You know, was Eddie, you know, the rise and fall of Eddie, the great Eddie Gilbert, was he his own worst enemy? But it sounds to me like if you really knew him, sure, maybe public perception would say, "Oh, he was his own worst enemy," but it sounds like his greatest strengths were the things that.
Hey, fellas, can we not all three say this? If we're saying something negative about ourselves, could we not probably say that about all three of ourselves? I think probably so, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
That's my only thing. And I'm not trying to get out of answering the question because I'll answer anything about you ask me.
Sure.
But yeah, my brother, and like I sit here and said, man, I rode more miles with my brother, went to about every territory with him that he went to, and man, me and my brother was best friends. And you know, that's one of the hardest things in life. I mean, you know, you don't want people to go through this, but you're usually going to go through losing your parents and your siblings and everything. But man, it was tough. It was a tough pill for me to swallow being, I think, 24 years old. And I mean, me and my brother was real tight. And when they called and gave me the news, I was in Nashville. And y'all fellas know my partner, like you said, this Memphis Mafia shirt. The last two of the Memphis Mafia that's still alive today is myself and Wildfire Tommy Rich. And in 1990, about two, I would say, there was a little faction, and it was my brother, myself, Wildfire Tommy Rich, Nature Boy Buddy Landell, and Too Sexy Brian Christopher. Now I'd say that's a pretty good heel crew there for a territory, right, guys?
I agree. Totally agree.
And myself and Tommy are the last two. Man, it was tough. On me when I was in Nashville. I'd done Memphis TV that morning. I was on the way to Nashville. I got to Nashville. I was in the dressing room, and Eddie Marlin and Randy Hill said they come to the dressing room, and you know what it is. Eddie Marlin's Jerry Jarrett's father-in-law. He's the promoter, the boss, right? And everything. So they come to the dressing room and they said, Doug, can I see you out back? Fellas, y'all know the first thing I was thinking, right? What have I done now? What I was trying to think, what have I done in the last day or two that they can be calling me out back, and they're going to try to say I've done something wrong. So I'll go out back and I'm thinking, well, I've done something, but I'll hear in a minute. So then they asked me, they say, have you talked to anybody? And I said, no, fellas, I haven't. What's going on? And they said, well, man, we hate to tell you this, but your brother passed away. And man, that's that's a tough pill to swallow when you're, whether you're a younger man or older man or whatever, which, I mean, you always think, here's the thing, guys, and y'all probably don't do this either. None of us, like, I've got a lot of pictures with my brother because me and him was brothers, but as far as with Eddie, but here's the thing, we never think there's going to be a day that when we don't see anyone again. Just as far as us on the road, us guys, I won't say wrestlers, but I don't mean just wrestlers. I mean, y'all fellas and everybody else, we don't want to think there's ever a day. And fellas, we think so much that we're so invincible. Now I don't know if that's a funny thing or a sad thing to say, but we never think there's going to be a day that something happens to us when we was also young. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
We never looked. We never looked ahead of that. We never got, like me and other people, I never had really pictures. None of us guys did, like, made with each other, because we always thought we was going to be here forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just different.
Doug, couple of things I want to cover, Jimmy.
Yeah.
500 level has now improved on the M&P code. Now go to MP30 for 30% off. Jimmy, I got to tell you something, right? I was at the beach, again, 500 level. If you guys haven't looked at the shirts, right, go to the website. It's incredible. And I got to be honest, right? So it was a little chilly today. I brought the dogs to the beach. I was off work for the Jewish holidays,
today.
right?
It's cold.
It was cold,
Yeah.
but I have, from 500 level, I have a Roman Reigns sweatshirt. Now, usually sweatshirts are not always the nicest fabric, unless I'm into really nice fabric because I just don't like things up against my skin. So usually I'll get thinner type of shirts, but this is a heavy sweatshirt. The fabric, unbelievable. And you're going to get a deal at 30% off, Jimmy. I mean, my God, it's a no-brainer, guys. I am telling you, once you get one shirt from them, you'll get 50. I guarantee it. And they've got all the sports. Yeah, dude, tell me what you think of it, Jimmy.
They're so comfortable. I got to get a long sleeve now. I'm telling you, I got to, because it was chilly today, especially for a guy who's been in Panama City Beach the last 2 years. It was chilly today, and I love the material. It's so silky. Is that the right word for it? I don't know.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, dude.
It's so comfortable. So, yeah, I got to get myself some leveled long sleeves. That's for sure. 30%.
And again,
off.
it doesn't, they got plenty of wrestling stuff. They got baseball stuff. They've got football. They got everything, dude. MMA. They got it all, man. And I'm telling you, it's very high quality. Again, 500 level code MP30, 30% off. So if a T-shirt costs you $20, what's 30% off on $20, dude?
It's enough. 10 plus another 20% tacked on top. Not much. It's a steal. It's a steal.
I agree. I want to remind everybody too, the Monty and the Pharaoh show, hit the QR code, be willing to check out our shows on YouTube, where we got almost 24,000 subscribers. Go to our Facebook page where we're approaching 27,000 subscribers. And again, if you feel like donating to the show, please go to the Monty and the Pharaoh webpage, hit donate. Helps us bring in more guests. Trying to entertain Jim. We've got the big event coming up, so a lot of good stuff happening right now.